Hey, Fedheads, this is Sharing Our Pairings, episode 101, Spotlight on Flor Dominicana. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. Sharing Our Pairings is broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course, at home on cigarfederation.com. You can tune in via cigarfederation.com, YouTube, or now, hopefully, streaming Facebook Live. We had some technical glitches before the show, so hopefully that's all worked out. Fresh back from Nicaragua and Trips, we are here to do some pairing. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Tripp Trent. Trippy, what's going on, buddy? I'm not sure if I have audio for Tripp for some reason. 1 second.
Oh, that was my bad. I accidentally muted myself.
There we go.
So we are live on Facebook.
Fantastic.
The video's a little choppy, which seems weird.
Yeah, it happens.
But that happens. We'll see how it turns out. Obviously, we just got back from Nicaragua, which was great. Had a fun time for all. And I'm ready to get back into doing the show because it's been a little while.
It's been a hot minute. I think it's been, by my math, maybe a month now.
Yeah, just about.
And apologize to all of our listeners and audience members who listen via podcast and tune in every week live. Unfortunately, I had some severe weather issues here. It was well beyond the surgeon standard for putting up with that cold, and we had to put a kibosh on the show. But it's nice. We're like, all of a sudden, it's a complete reversal. It's nice. We're good. We're smoking cigars. We're having some bevies shortly, hopefully. Yeah. So, of course, we're doing a spotlight on Flor Dominicana. I've got some notes here. Trippy, maybe why don't you talk about what you're smoking tonight first?
This is the first time I've had this. I've smoked the regular Lennox a couple months ago, about a year ago, actually. But right here I got the Petite Lennox, which is, I forgot the size off the top of my head. I believe it's 5 by 42. It's really more of a Corona than what I would call any kind of petite size.
Nice.
Like just short of what I would call a standard Corona. 4 by 42 or 6 by 42, 5 by 42 in that range.
Well, I'm smoking the Toro, and I was commenting to Jeff, my boss, who was nice enough to bring these back from Corona Cigar Company down in Orlando. Much appreciated. And this is the Toro. Now, it definitely looks like it's obviously a Toro Extra because, it's way beyond 5 inches and 6 inches. It's a 6.5 by 50. But, looking at it's so funny how things have come full circle because I look at this now at a 50 ring gauge and it seems so small, which isn't right. Like, it's a 50 ring gauge. That should be sort of on the larger spectrum, at least traditional larger spectrum. But it doesn't. It looks small. It looks almost like a Corona, like a 46 to me, which is just so strange.
Yeah, and I think it's partially like the color of the stick and the band on there. That it just, I don't know, something about it messes with your head, and it just doesn't look the size that it is.
Right. Yeah. No, I would totally agree with that. Talking about the tobacco here, the wrapper kind of has a rustic quality to it, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
So, it's got some bumps, it's got some lumps, it's got some veins. And I know a lot of people out there are like, it's got veins. I can't smoke this. It's no good. Within reason, I don't really care if it looks rustic or not. I don't care if it's super shiny. I don't care. I just care how it smokes and how it tastes and whether the price is a good value, really.
And that's flavor, dog. Yeah, those veins are flavor.
This little pockets of flavor, the little capsules of that delicious Brazilian Maduro wrapper flavor. So talking about the specs here, Brazilian Maduro wrapper. It's got a San Andreas binder. We love the San Andreas on this show. It's got Piloto Cubano filler. I love Piloto Cubano. And Palo de Oro. So all around, like some really good tobacco. Now, I can't remember the MSRP. Maybe Trippy, while I talk about their mission statement, you could take a quick peek. I think it was in like it was a little more expensive, than the $9 sticks. Like, I think it was pushing $11.50. But one of the things I want to talk about is they've got a really cool sort of mission statement, and that'll become The reason I'm speaking about this will become relevant later as I talk about the various breweries that we're pairing with tonight and how terrible their websites are and how I can't find their mission statement. And can you tell I'm fired up tonight? And
Oh
I
yeah.
and I can't find out when you were founded or who you were founded or where you're located. These are not things I should look for. Now in La Flor Dominicana, great site, really well laid out, wonderful mission statement. So I'm just going to read the mission statement out there, and hopefully everyone stays tuned in. It says La Flor Dominicana was founded in 1996 in Santiago, Dominican Republic. Our commitment to quality, consistency, and customer service has placed our brand among the most prestigious premium cigar brands in the world. Over the years, we have developed a portfolio of quality blends, shapes, and sizes which fulfill the ever-changing needs of today's cigar smokers. Our well-known consistency is possible because we personally supervise every stage of our production, from farming our tobacco at our farm in La Canela to the art of manufacturing in our modern facility. The vertical integration is our guarantee. And that's a really great mission statement. Like that, I'm reading that, and I've smoked obviously lots of LFTs before. I love them, and they're good. So
Oh, they good.
you read a mission statement like that, and it's like, yeah, okay, I like it. I dig
Yeah, and it's comprehensive. It
it. Hmm.
it covers all the bases. It's like we're quality, we're keeping up with the trends, we're vertically integrated. They hit all the bases.
All the bases. Now, you were mentioning prior to the show, and I was not up on because I'm still kind of in vacation mode. Coming off a vacation in Nicaragua, headed to Havana. My head's not really. I don't have my Canadian head on, Tripp. I got my Nicaragua head on right now, and I'm not on it. But you were mentioning it's someone's birthday today. Someone relative to this show that we're doing today,
Yes.
relevant to this show.
I
that we're
had
doing
no
today.
idea when we started talking about this show, and we had talked about it a couple weeks ago, and then we decided to schedule it. And I had no idea that today was Lito Gomez's birthday,
Which is
which is
awesome.
just super relevant. I mean, we're doing this now. This is kind of like a tribute, a birthday present for Lito.
And I know he's tuned in. I mean, he's
Oh,
definitely
you
tuned into
know.
our show. He's not out there enjoying delicious cigars or rum or steak dinner. He's tuning in and sharing our pairings because it's an important
Yeah,
it's an important part of
yeah. We
everyone's
know what
life.
Lito does on Wednesday nights.
Absolutely. Wednesday night is sharing our pair night. Well, maybe not for the last 4 weeks, but certainly tonight it's sharing
Oh
our
yeah.
pairing night. Yeah, absolutely. So we are doing some pairings tonight, but we wanted to give some love to La Flor Dominicana, which is kind of the spotlight. I don't think we've actually ever featured La Flor Dominicana on the show before, which is really a shame because it makes some really great smokes. The Lennox is one of them. I'd happily pair the Andalusian Bull if anyone out there knows where to get their dirty weasel hands on them. If
I haven't seen him.
call me, email me,
Call me.
call me. I have no idea. I don't think they're out there. I think that it is very unlikely that you can get your dirty hands on Andalusian Bull. And congratulations to them for getting Cigar of the Year.
Yeah,
That was awesome.
yeah. I haven't had one. I can't speak to it yet. As far as I know, it's a mythical cigar.
And it did mark kind of an odd change up for Cigar Aficionado to have a cigar that's a limited edition
Hmm.
in to even place really within the top 10 was kind of surprising, but to get number one, I think that was probably a big surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if it's actually going to be a single release, or if they're going to do new releases of it, maybe in different vitolas, because that seems more like something that LFD would do.
Do the limited, not limited run?
Yeah, but do limited in different sizes, so we're not getting the same cigar every time, and that way people who bought it in the original run still feel like they got the old hotness.
I like that. I like that because it still keeps it limited. All the people out there that get salty when a limited edition comes back aren't necessarily going to get salty. I think that's a good idea, Tripp. I think you got a good
Yeah,
business plan.
yeah. I should go into business.
I think you should go into business. All right, cool. Well, let's get after it because I'm kind of thirsty. And I don't know if
Oh
it's
yeah, time's wasting.
I don't know if it's 6 days in Nicaragua of just drinking rum and scotch and whiskey every day. I don't know what that says about me, but no, we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna kick it off with a really odd one, and I'm gonna jack this up because it's in Danish. So I apologize to all of our Danish listeners. I know you guys are out there. It's Brouwerij to Verzet, and it's Belgium. So I said Danish, and I've already screwed it up. It's a microbrewery located in Anzegem, Belgium. And that's all I could get off their website.
Oh
So
wow.
I had to go to our friends at Untapped.com. If you don't have the Untapped app, and I'm just going to plug them here, even though they don't sponsor us in any way, you can Untapped. It's probably a good show for you to sponsor. We drink a lot of beer.
Oh yeah.
But Untapped has great specs on the different just on the different breweries. So you can go into a brewery and their profile, and it's kind of got a little background, which again, like I said, had more on there than it did on the actual brewery website. Something to be said about that. So according to Untapped, they were founded in 2011, and it was just 3 guys who had completed a brewing program, and they decided to just start up their own brewery. So they're still going. It's 2017. I think their average rating on Beer Advocate is like 96. So, or at least they're rated 96 as a brewery. So I don't know if that like is the average of all their beers, but it sounds good to me. And I'm going to jack this name up because again, it's not Danish. It's Belgium, Belgish.
Belgish. Which I learned in Nicaragua. In Belgium, they mostly speak French.
They mostly speak French, although with a Belgium accent. We do have a friend actually at the factory we're visiting down there in Granada who is from Belgium and tunes in. So he's probably going to send me a hot email after the show.
Oh yeah, he'll be grumpy.
He'll be grumpy. But this is the old Bruin hip hops. I kind of like that hip hops. Now, what's this? The difference between this and the regular old Bruin? It just says hip hops on it, and it's part of a. It was part of a Christmas, calendar series. Other than that, it's the exact same beer. 6% ABV. It's a red brown ale classified, and they say that the beer is matured, and then interestingly enough, they age it at least 6 months in the bottle. So that's kind of interesting. They make a point of saying that. They say the notes in the beer are acidic, green apple, wood, bread, and red fruit. They say the acid notes kind of hit you right away up front, and then they kind of transition. So I'm going to hold that up. I mean, it's definitely, I can't really see it on my webcam there, but it's a brown ale, and it's kind of like a hazy brown ale. So like it's not completely opaque, but it's not completely translucent either. So it's hazy brown ale. So I'm gonna get after it here, Tripp. Let you talk about your first beverage tonight before we get into our first break.
All right, you get after it. I'll try not to let you talk about this one too much because I know you know more about it than I do. I've got a beer from Innis and Gunn.
Oh, there we go.
This is actually the first beer I've had from them, which might give you an aneurysm.
That's the Scot in me is very angry right now.
So this is the Innis and Gunn hopped bourbon cask ale. So it's an Imperial red ale that is matured in first fill bourbon casks, which means the last thing that was in them was bourbon. And then after that, Innis and Gunn acquired the casks and put this in them. And then after it comes out of the casks, they actually dry hop it before bottling it. They don't say what the IBUs are, so I don't know how bitter to expect it to be. But the fact that it's been aged for several months in barrels makes me think it's probably not going to be too hoppy.
Which particular Innis and Gunn was that again?
It's called the hopped bourbon cask ale, and it's a Imperial red ale that's aged in bourbon barrels and then dry hopped after the aging. And it clocks in at 7.4% alcohol.
Woo.
And it's a pretty nice little dark red color. Basically exactly what I would expect an Imperial red ale to look like. Tough to see on my camera. It looks a little more brown, but it's certainly got a reddish hue to it. How's your pairing doing there, John?
Well, I recognize that we hopped right in the pairing and didn't really talk about the cigar notes at all.
Oh.
So maybe I'll just kind of quickly hit that up right after we take this break. So just a reminder to our audience, you're tuned into Sharing Our Pairing. This is episode 101, Spotlight on Flor Dominicana. We are broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. And of course, we're tuned in to podcast catchers everywhere around the world, whether you're on iTunes, Android, or anything in between, including a computer. You can tune in to just about any podcast catcher in the world and pick us up. Thanks for subscribing. We appreciate your support. Of course, Sharing Our Pairing is brought to you by Gurkha Cigars, makers of the finest cigars in the world. You should check out the Heritage and the Heritage Maduro. They good. Talk to your local B&M. They'll hook you up. They'll find a Gurkha that's right for you. But that's not what we're smoking tonight. We're smoking the La Flor Dominicana Lunox. And I have to say, right off the start, I got a lot of spice. And I'm going to preface this saying a lot of spice for Dominican cigars because I tend not to find most Dominican cigars spicy right off the start. That's typically, for me, as a general thing, that's more of a Nicaraguan thing.
Yeah, I
Now,
totally agree.
you totally agree.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that the spice was quite balanced. So it wasn't a heater, it wasn't like the Don Pepin classic burn your face off, which I enjoy, but it was more of a white pepper, like a nice white pepper, and then it had some really nice like toasted quality, like some chocolate, like if you were to take chocolate and maybe roast it over a fire, so it's got a little bit of smoky quality to it, and then underneath that there's just hints of earth, and I don't know if the hints of earth are coming from the Piloto Cabano or something else, but what I like is that I'm not usually a big fan of earthiness in my cigars. It's kind of a note that can be a little overpowering, and I find the earthiness in this to be really balanced. It's offsetting some of the sweetness. It's in balance there. How's the first maybe couple inches of your cigar doing?
I'm actually going to say a lot of things that I echo when I start talking about my first beer here. But I agree with what you said. It's a very well balanced cigar. It's got a little bit of everything. But nothing is too overpowering. A lot of Nicaraguan cigars are really spicy. A lot of Dominican cigars are really earthy and kind of minerally. And sometimes they're lacking in spice for me. And this one's just got a little bit of everything, just enough. Nothing is overpowering, and none of the flavors seem like they need to be amped up. It's just nice and balanced, but still kind of strong and in your face.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, if we talk, and of course it gets complicated when we talk about strength versus body. And in this case, we're really kind of talking a little bit of both. For strength, I'd say it's kind of like nicotine strength. It's probably right smack dab in the medium, maybe slightly medium plus. But for body, this is absolutely medium plus, full-bodied cigar. And the flavors are very to the forefront. They're not mild. You don't have to reach for them. But at the same time, it's got a very clean finish. So, I take a puff and I'm getting maybe a little bit of earthiness and maybe just a hint of leather with a little bit of drawing mouthfeel post-draw. But other than that, it's like I get a puff, I stop, palate clears up, I'm ready for a beverage or another puff. Pretty good so far.
Yeah, where the strength with the amount of body that this has, it's the finish is surprisingly clean. I mean, as soon as you stop puffing, it's almost gone.
Because I do find, and I don't know what your experience is, but I do find with a lot of full-bodied cigars, the finish tends to, along with that full-bodiedness, you tend to get a very long finish. Like it coats your mouth, coats your tongue. That flavor sticks with you for quite a while after the puff.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. You kind of, I always call that, I refer to that as weighing on the palate.
Right. I agree.
This is not heavy on the palate, even though it's got a ton of flavor.
Okay. Cool. Well, let me talk about my beverage because it's an interesting one. It's not at all what I expected. I get what they're talking about, the acidity, and if you've ever had a lambic, I would say this is kind of like a lambic on steroids. I get a lot of that citrusy, acidic quality to it that I get out of a lambic. So, they talk about green apple. I definitely get lots of apple. It's almost like, the kind of the best quality of a cider for me, but like it's a cider and a lambic and a brown ale all kind of mixed together, which sounds gross, but it ends up being quite good. And it's not like, I didn't know what to expect because I've never had this beer before, but it ends up being interesting because the acidic nature of this beer is really clearing my palate. And we've really had a tough time in the show pairing ciders before. Like they're too acidic, they're too tart. And this really walks that line nice and carefully without being too sweet, without being too sour or tart. It's right smack dab in the middle, and I dare say it's good. I'm going to take some more sips here, and let you talk about Innocent Gunn, or Innocent Gunn, as Robbie thinks I say.
I noticed as you were saying it, when you first said the name, I was like, oh, it sounds like Innocent Gunn. I didn't even think about that when I read it in my head. So this beer actually goes really well with the cigar because it's sort of like a couple of different styles mixed together. You've got a little bit of like that roasty, sweet body that you get from a red ale, and then you've got a little bit of hoppiness, but not too much. It's a little more than I expected, um, even though it's called a hopped bourbon ale, just because I know typically we don't get as hoppy beers from the Europe as we do in the U.S. because we're kind of crazy for hops. Um, and then it's got a little bit of that bourbon character, but really not as much as something like I don't know, something that's really bourbony, like
Mm-hmm.
an arrogant bastard that's aged in bourbon barrels. Like
Right.
that kicks you in the mouth with bourbon flavor. And this has just everything in moderation. It's got a little bit of hops, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of roastiness, and then a little bit of that bourbon character, which I find to go really well with the cigar. It's kind of light for the flavors of the cigar, but because it's so complex, I think it works pretty well.
And I would echo those sentiments. Part of the reason I think I like Innis and Gunn is that it it is on the lighter end of the bourbon influence on the beer. So while you still taste it and while it still accents the beer, it doesn't take away from what the beer quality is. And we've talked about that on shows where we've had barrel aged beers where sometimes the barrel age is really nice. Sometimes the barrel age just takes it over, and there's really a fine line there where you want the barrel age to have some influence, but you want to take the beer over so that all you're tasting is the bourbon or scotch or whatever that was in there before in that drink.
Yeah, and conversely, there are some bourbon aged or spirit aged beers where you can't even tell.
Mm-hmm.
It may not even be aged in anything as far as you tell from your palate, but
Yeah, it could just be a new make barrel. You'd have no idea.
yeah, exactly.
And of course, we've talked about it on the show before because Innis and Gunn, I think I've had every single expression that they make and certainly multiples of those expressions. It really just started out where a whiskey manufacturer wanted to take their beer. If I got that right, yeah, the whiskey manufacturer wanted to take their beer barrels and age whiskey in them. So they're aging whiskey in them. And then it occurred to Innis and Gunn that really what we need to do is release the beer aged in the whiskey barrel, not the other way around. And it turned out to be a wonderful success because, frankly, I love every beer they've put out. They've got a couple different expressions from, something that's quite light, like just a blonde ale, all the way up to the full-on bourbon and whiskey barrel-aged. And they're excellent. And typically the price value is quite affordable. Like they're not in the boutique or microbrewery range for pricing.
Oh, really? So here they're pretty expensive.
Oh, are they?
I think this bottle, which is it doesn't say what the
It's 330.
exact.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I would guess it's 330. I mean, it
12
says 1 pint and 0.9 ounces.
Right.
But I was hoping for centiliters. But yeah, it's 330 centiliters or milliliters? It has to be centiliters.
330 milliliters.
Milliliters. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I paid about $10 for this.
Really?
Yeah. So it's kind of maybe it's just the word barrel that does it. But it was right in the barrel age category as far as pricing goes here.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I think
maybe I just
normally.
overpaid.
What's that?
I could have just overpaid.
I mean, it's tough to say. Maybe the import costs are higher from Scotland to the U.S. Maybe they were their the Commonwealth brothers, so they cut us a deal here in Canada. I don't know, but I think typically we only pay $4 something a bottle for most Innis and Gunn stuff on the shelf here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd buy that in a minute.
And that's science dollars, not freedom dollars. So it's a really good deal.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, going back to my pairing here, I'm not sure I'm not sure it's a thinker. It's a thinker pairing because, like I said, it's very similar to a lambic where there's not a lot of sweetness there. It's a good beer. It's a funky pairing, and I just don't know whether it's a funky good pairing or a funky bad pairing. And I suppose if I haven't decided my mind up, I don't know what that means. But like I said, it's interesting. If you've ever had a lambic before, lambics just have this particular sour, acidic note, and this has exactly that. It's almost like a blackberry lambic, just without that blackberry note. It works. It's not at all what I was expecting out of a beer pairing. Where would you say you are on the scale of goodness for your Innis and Gunn pairing?
Well, before I do that, what's the style on that beer? Because as you're talking about it, I can't figure out how to classify it in my head. I don't know if I missed when you said what the actual style is.
They called it a red brown ale, but it doesn't taste. I mean, it's not a brown ale. It's like you said. It's. I would call it a lambic brown ale because this has every single quality of a lambic, and then some of the qualities of. You know how brown ales typically have that toasted malty sweetness
Oh,
to them.
yeah, of course.
There's none of that. Like there's zero toast. So it's got all the sort of color of a brown ale, but it's got all the mouthfeel and palate presence of a lambic. So
Wow,
it's
that's
sour.
bizarre.
That's what I'm saying. It's bizarre. I mean, it's interesting bizarre. So I guess that's like as a beer, it's interesting. I'm definitely enjoying this. But as a pairing, I don't know. Like it's different. I mean, it is a great palate cleanser between puffs.
I mean, there's something to be said for that kind of pairing. This one,
Yeah.
I would rate mine pretty high. I like this beer for I feel like it goes really well with a cigar, and I feel like it could go with almost anything because it's not too overpowering for many cigars that I can think of that you would want to drink a beer with. And it's got enough complexity that unless you're smoking something really strong, you're not going to overpower the beer.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I would think Innis and Gunn for me is approaching the point where it's almost a default pairing for a lot of beers because or a lot of cigars because the strength level of it doesn't tend to overpower most beers or most cigars. And it is definitely a full-bodied flavor experience, but it's strange that you can have a full-bodied flavor experience that doesn't overpower something else that's not the same body level, which I might have to kind of rethink my process on pairing.
Yeah, I completely see what you mean because it's right kind of middle of the road as far as beer body goes.
Yeah.
It's not completely taking over your palate, but it's not something that has little flavor at all. It's got a considerable amount of flavor while not taking over your palate at all.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
But yeah, it's a fun line. But I think it's probably time to get into our second pairing of the night. It's stout time, even though it's not really stout weather. I think we've moved in stout category. But before we do that, I just want to remind our audience that you are tuned in to Sharing Our Pairings, episode 101. This is Spotlight on La Flor Dominicana. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined as always by my co-host, Trippy Trent. We are broadcast live around the world. And of course, you can check us out at cigarfederation.com. Appreciate your support. You can also check us out on podcast, which if you're listening, you already are. So make sure to subscribe to get the weekly shows. We've got Sharing Our Pairings, Cigar Chat. Occasionally, I'll toss out the audio review for those who enjoy that. But we're here to talk about beer and pairings, and I'm ready to get after it. Now, we've featured this beer so many times that I feel like they should really sponsor us. And this is Evil Twin Brewing, No Hero. Now, I saw Oatmeal Stout, and I kind of just leapt at it because I'm kind of a sucker for Oatmeal Stouts. It's kind of plain packaging, black, cool, really matte black container. There's not a lot of fanciness there. There's some like stars on it or whatever, but it's not very elaborate. This is 7.7%, which is actually a bit lower than what I was expecting for an oatmeal stout. I typically find oatmeal stouts in the 8+, so reasonably sessionable. And then they have kind of a funky. It's almost like Michael Giannini did the writing for this. So I'm just going to read this off. It says, "An alien-like outsider, always flirting with oddity and exploring anxiety and paranoia. A style chameleon, a wonderful labyrinth, and truly a transcendent genius. It is impossible not to idolize out of proportion. This is a stout. It may not be a hero, but it's attractive, clever, and hungry for stardom." I don't know what any of that means. I don't know what any of that means.
That doesn't tell me anything about what I'm about to experience.
I don't know anything more about the beer than when I started, other than the fact that it's an oatmeal stout. I mean, I got that from the front of the package. Now, it's definitely got that oatmeal stout quality to it in terms of visuals. It is a little bit thinner. Like when I look at the how it approaches the glass, it is a little bit thinner than what I would typically expect out of a stout, which is somewhat disappointing. I tend to really associate oatmeal stouts with being a lot more viscous, very thick, very rich. But we haven't had any tastes yet, so I'm gonna shut up for a couple minutes here and let Trippy talk about his second pairing of the night.
All right. And I have the other beer that should probably sponsor the show because I know that it was on a couple times with Rob in his era, and it's been on. This is at least the second time that we've had it on since I've been around.
Rob, who?
I don't know. I don't remember the rest of his name. But this is Death by Coconut from Oskar Blues.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, it's a winter seasonal, and we've just finished up winter. So I figured why not drink it and not leave it sitting around for another few months. If you don't know, it's an Irish porter, clocks in at 6.5% ABV. So it's a little, kind of right in the where you would expect a porter to be, I guess. And it is brewed with liquid cacao and coconut. So it's got some of that chocolatey goodness and a little bit of coconut flavor. Maybe a lot of bit of coconut flavor, hence the name. How's your pairing doing, John?
Good. So I'm not going to talk about Evil Twin too much because we've talked about them. But they are essentially kind of like a boutique cigar company in the sense that they don't have their own brewery. They pair with other breweries to do their concoctions, which is kind of cool. I mean, it reduces your overhead expense. You can come up with cool projects. I mean, in my mind, it's very much like a lot of boutique cigar companies. This bad boy is 7% ABV. The brewery that it's brewed out of is Two Roads Brewing, which is out of Connecticut. And
yes, that is in Connecticut.
Yeah. And I have to say, I'm not sure if my palate is jacked up from the beer I started, the old Bruin, because it's really tough for me to get the oatmeal quality. I'm just getting a lot of bitterness out of this. And I think it's just my palate is jacked, which obviously, as a quote-unquote pairing expert, I picked the wrong order tonight because my palate is just not coming back. But I can tell you it's got a nice mouthfeel to it. Again, it's a little bit thin for my taste. I tend to like my oatmeal stouts on the thicker side. I want a really thick, viscous stout. It's definitely got some espresso quality on the nose. On the palate, it's sweet. But the sweetness is very subdued, and again, I don't know if it's because my palate is jacked or it's just the way this stout is particularly designed. But the sweetness of it is very subdued, and I tend to find oatmeal stouts quite sweet. The richness of it is quite jacked up, and there's usually a lot of coffee and espresso. And on this stout, I find all of those levers really dialed down significantly.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. And kind of conversely, this porter has it doesn't have the viscosity or the roasty flavors that a stout has, but as far as how much, just the level of flavor, it's just turned up. I mean, there's a lot of hops, and for only 25 IBUs, you really taste hops. Then you've got bitter coffee, or not coffee, chocolate rather. Even though you do get some kind of coffee espresso kind of flavors, but the chocolate, the coconut are really the stars of the show in this one. It's got a ton of coconut and a ton of chocolate flavor, which I find delightful, and I think it goes pretty well with the cigar.
I think the Oskar Blues Death by Coconut is probably a great benchmark for translating body and strength from cigars into beers. Because I feel like that's a perfect example of where something doesn't have the strength because it's only 6.5% ABV. But like you said, all the flavor profile, the body of that beer is dialed to 10, or 11, really, actually.
Yeah, it really is
actually dialed to 11.
It's got a ton of flavor, a ton of what I would call body, but it doesn't have much strength. Or I'm not even sure I would call it body, because I feel like for body with beer, that's kind of how chewy it is.
Right.
And with this, it's the level of strength the level of flavor and the strength of flavor is really high. And then the body and the strength itself is just right down the middle.
I think in terms of porters, I can't think of a porter that I've ever had that is even remotely as in your face as Death by Coconut.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, A lot of times porters seem kind of kind of like just they just
Yeah,
kind of took a
Nancy.
stout and watered it down.
They're Nancy. You can say it's like,
Yeah,
I'm a porter. Eh.
they just don't do much for me because it's
No.
really just a roasty dark ale or a really light stout.
Yeah.
With lots of bubbles. And normally they don't do it for me, but this is one of my favorite porters on the planet.
Now, do you think they're doing a barrel aged version of the Death by Coconut? Because that would be hot.
I'm 90% sure that they do have a rum barrel aged Death by Coconut.
Oh, good God!
Yeah, I haven't been able to find any, but I'm almost certain it exists.
So a little bit of advertising for Oskar Blues because I think that beer would be fantastic.
Oh, that would be amazing. And just an update on Facebook. Henry from Drew Estate is blowing us up with thumbs up.
Nice. I love Henry.
Thanks, Henry.
Henry from Drew Estate, great guy, super classy, great host. Henry was hosting us down at Cigar Safari for 5 days down at Drew Estate, and we certainly appreciate that. It was a good time. Although, getting completely off topic from pairing here, I did find the weather in Esteli kind of sucky.
Oh yeah, that weather was that was not ideal, and not what we're used to when we go down there. You go down there, you usually feel like you're on vacation. It's all sunny and nice, but not too hot. And this year it was a little rainy. It was pretty cloudy. It got downright chilly some days.
When the Canadians got to put a hoodie on, you know something's wrong.
Yeah, on the last night, you were wearing your hoodie there, and you just put it on as soon as you got it painted. And like after a little while, I was like, "That's weird that John's not taking off the hoodie. It's pretty warm here." Yeah. And then we go outside, and I'm like, "Oh, that's why he didn't take his hoodie off because it's cold."
It's cold.
Other than that, it was great.
But the complete opposite when we went to Granada. Granada was like, well, in Celsius it was almost 10 degrees warmer than Esteli.
Yeah.
And in Freedom degrees, I think it was 20 degrees warmer than, actually almost 25 degrees warmer than Esteli.
Yeah, about 25.
Yeah, it was nice. It was good.
It was nice. It was hot.
So, I'm going to move on to my last pairing here because the first pairing was funky and interesting. The second pairing, I'm not sure it was really what I wanted. I kind of feel a little bit let down by this oatmeal stout in terms of the pairing. I think it's a fine oatmeal stout, but in terms of how it pairs with the cigar is just running this oatmeal right over like a bull, like an Andalusian bull, just running it right over. Just throwing it out there. It just doesn't have enough body to keep up with the cigar. It doesn't have all the characteristics that I come to love in an oatmeal stout with, big amounts of espresso, toastedness, malty character. None of that's really there. It's just very subdued. It's a nice balanced oatmeal stout, but this cigar just beats it up, beats it up like in a boxing ring for 12 rounds and then just loses by 2 points to decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. People out there who watched a boxing match a few days ago might know what I'm talking
reference. About. Sweet reference.
So I'm going to move on to something that isn't as disappointing.
All right. That sounds a great idea. So
I've been eyeing this for some time, and I'm going to jack it up, and I apologize to all our native French speakers because I'm working on my Espanol, and yo hablo un poco de Espanol, and my French is very, very small as well. So this is La Debauche, and it's kind of a cool package. Actually made in France, which is always cool, and it's in Charente, France, and I can't pronounce the city. It's Angoulême, I believe, but they say the concept of the brewery was born from a common passion for good products and those who consume them. The artisan brewery is the adventure of a couple of beer lovers who wanted to share their culture with one of the oldest beverages in the world, and each of their beers is first and foremost a visual experience. Their heart and range of their corset-shaped labels discreetly invites you to la beau. So that's kind of the little French touch. It's got a little bit of sex in it. Got to throw a little bit of sex in there. And they say, while our other beers boldly display the label of tattoo artists, illustrators, or comic book authors. So that's kind of cool. I feel like that'd be right up Robbie's alley, really.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I do have to say you're a brave man coming on live and being willing to read French. Absolutely. As someone who doesn't speak French. Because I couldn't do that. Like, I would just butcher it. Even worse.
I mean, I still recall the time where I had to practice for like a half an hour for the it wasn't the Norse beer. It was like from
Oh,
Finland. It was Nugna and
Nugna-oo. Yeah.
Nugna and I probably listened to that YouTube pronunciation for half an hour. Again, unfortunately, my French pronunciation is very very terrible. So I apologize to all our French listeners out there. Love your language, love your culture, but I'm not very good at your language. But talking about the beer here, it's kind of this weird. I don't say weird. It's a mixture of my first beer and my second beer in terms of it's still got that dark, cloudy brown color to it, but it's a lot darker. It had a wicked head on it, like crazy foamy pour on it. I actually jacked up the pour a little, but it's a cognac barrel beer. So they age this in cognac barrels.
Hmm.
9.5% ABV, so it's a heater. And it's French wood oak and cognac VS. So I'm kind of excited because I like a good cognac. And they say the nose is woody and suave. So I don't really
Oh,
have any tasting notes.
that's
Definitely.
that's just one of those like we're gonna tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds great, but it doesn't mean anything to you.
Yeah, I mean it's not a story about an alien or anything like that coming down and changing my experience, but at least it's like focused on the beer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. You definitely get a ton of cognac off the nose. Like I mean a ton. Like it's like cognac left in a glass that evaporated overnight, which I dig, and just gobs of French oak as well. So
Yeah.
like just that like really bright French oak nose. So I'm gonna take some sips here, and I'm hoping I'm not let down by the experience, and I'll let you talk about your third and final beer tonight.
All right. So going back to the as John mentioned, the brewery that should sponsor us, I have got yet another Evil Twin beer here. One that I know has been on the show before, but I think it's been a while. This is Imperial Biscotti Break from Evil Twin.
Oh yeah,
Oh, it's so good. It's
so good.
their coffee stout, Imperial stout with coffee added. And it says other natural flavors, though it's not clear exactly what that means. I think it probably means vanilla, but I'm not sure what else. Something
Hmm.
else that makes it taste biscotti, but um,
Maybe they
we'll
dumped
find
a
out.
bunch of biscotti in there.
It could be, but I feel like that just wouldn't translate well, and it would probably just ferment and turn into a lot of alcohol.
Fair enough.
Um, this is an 11.5% imperial stout that is just just shy of motor oil. You can tell it's a little bit brown there, but once you get to the wider part of the glass, it's just straight black.
Nice glass.
Oh, thank you. Little saints and sinners gear there.
Call me.
Um, yeah, I know that it's been on the show a couple times, and I just love this beer. Do you want me to read the silly Michael Giannini level story from this
Go
one?
for it. I love those stories,
All
man.
right.
It
So,
makes me embrace beer culture.
well, this doesn't have a date on the bottle, but when I get to the end of the story, you'll know why I'm looking for one.
Roger that.
So it says the Roman Empire had a certain je ne sais quoi, festive food culture, extravagant architecture, and spectacular live entertainment. Some might argue the emperors were brutal, mad, and hungry for power, and the people vain when taking baths and working out all day. Listen, that's still all part of the secret imperial ingredient. Keep it cool, clean, confident, arrogant, and flamboyant.
Wow.
Forza Imperiale. And then it says, produced and bottled by Westbrook Brewing Company. That's where they brew it in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. Best before 2015.
Awkward.
So I'm not sure. I've only had this bottle for about 2 months. I'm not sure if I bought a really old bottle
Hmm.
or if they just say that on all of them just for fun, because that seems like a thing that Evil Twin might do.
Yeah. Well, what did you say the ABV on that bad boy was?
11 and a half.
Yeah,
Here.
so I mean, there's no way that like a 11.5% beer is only good for. Let's say they brewed it and sit in the bottle for a year. I've got stouts that are 10 and 10.5% that have been sitting down for 2 years, sometimes 3 years,
Yeah,
and they just keep getting better. I mean, at that alcohol level, you can age them for quite some time.
yeah. So it's unclear whether I accidentally bought a very well aged beer,
Hmm.
or if they just say that to be funny.
Either way, it seems fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Either way, I like it.
good
How's your
deal.
pairing?
It's good. the I've never had a cognac aged barrel before, beer before, but probably because aging something cognac would be crazy expensive.
Yeah.
But it's probably not only is it the best pairing of the night, it might be one of the better pairings I've had with beer in some time now. Um, it's hard to describe. I mean, you just get it's kind of like really like a brown ale with the sweetness removed and replaced with a cognac. So it's not overly sweet. You get that nice, rich, I would say decadent cognac flavor, which is got sweetness, but then it's got a drying aspect to it, so it's not too sweet. Where I think if it had all the sweetness of a brown ale and cognac on top of that, it'd be just overpoweringly, sickeningly sweet. So sometimes we talk about barrel aged stuff that barrel age does make it too sweet. In this case, really nicely balanced. So that cognac both brings the sweetness, but also brings that drying mouthfeel. So it kind of kills the finish on it nicely. And I'll tell you what, with this Flor Dominicana Lennox, it's a hell of a good pairing. It's kind of amplifying all the flavors in the cigar now, almost too much, because the spice was really falling off for me. And now
Hmm.
I'm really finding that spice coming back and being supercharged. I'm going to take a couple retrohales here and just let you spit some truths about your pairing while I do that.
All right. Well, before I move on, uh, two things, both from listeners. So first, Dennis thinks that it's possible that there's almond extract or something like that added to the biscotti break, which I
Interesting.
think completely makes sense. I can absolutely taste some kind of nuts, and
Giggity.
biscotti typically being yeah, biscotti typically being almond based.
Yeah,
I can definitely see that being in here. The other one is a shout out to Don Bleeker, who we just saw last week on Safari.
it's our boy.
He is down there watching from Nicaragua with his own pairing.
Don, we appreciate the love. We talk about Burkina Faso all the time because we love the guys down at Burkina Faso. But when our listeners are down in Nicaragua tuning in, much love, brother, much love. I hope he's having a blast down in Nicaragua. He ended up staying for I think an additional 4 or 5 days to get the full Nika experience.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he was going on another tour with another cigar company. So on to my pairing. This is the I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. Maybe what used to be, I don't know if this reference will hit you or not, John, but what people used to think of as like the chisel. Like the chisel when the chisel came out, that
The LFD
cigar,
chisel.
yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
LFD chiseled double Lajero,
yeah.
like that thing was everything turned up to 12. Like
It was a heater.
yeah, everybody said it was crazy strong, crazy spicy, crazy flavorful. It just everything was turned up to 11. And this beer is the beer version of that. It's got a ton of coffee, a ton of that roasty, stouty sweetness, and then obviously a ton of alcohol. Uh, it may actually overpower the cigar a little bit now that I'm thinking about it.
Wow.
Uh, Maybe just a touch. I'll have to have a few more sips to make sure, but I think it's a pretty good pairing. I don't think there's a lot of cigars that could stand up to a beer like this because it's
Now,
just everything is so strong.
yeah. Now, I have to say, I'm sort of getting to the middle third of the Lennox, and I think I got a pending review on this bad boy, but I forgot that this cigar transitions nicely. So I was saying at the beginning, it's kind of a medium, maybe medium plus for strength, for nicotine strength, and I forgot that this bad boy kicks up a lot when you progress. So sitting almost at the halfway point here, it's stepped up a lot. Like it's got a lot of power to it, and the spiciness is coming back along with some earthiness and really some really nice sweetness, which I wasn't getting a lot in the first third. And it's interesting because this cognac barrel aged cigar, barrel aged beer, pardon me, is so sweet that the cigar is really overpowering that. So,
Wow.
yeah, strong cigar, but again, both the cigar and the beer have that really short finish to it. So they're going nicely together and they're not running each other over at all.
So I think that transition you were talking about, I think I actually had to relight right at the beginning of that transition.
Hmm.
So while you were talking, I just had to relight, and then took another puff, and man, it is strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's got lots more spice now, lots more strength, and lots more kind of burn on the retrohale. And I actually think I'll go back on what I said just a minute ago and say that it definitely stands up to this beer.
Well, so I think I'm going to try and coin a new term. Maybe it's being used, but I feel like it's got like a desserty quality to it. And by that I mean it's like this rich, complicated, complex mixture of things I associate with baked goods. So like
Yes.
chocolate, but like a chocolate that's been baked into some sort of loaf or cake. It's got some spices, but again, like a spicy cake. And then it's got the earthiness, but again, it's not like the typical earthiness I get out of some Dominican cigars where it's like I'm chewing on dirt. It's like you somehow mix dirt into the combination of flavors, and so it's in there, but it's all balanced with everything else. And I remember why I bought, a half a box of these because they're good.
Yeah, I think I got to get some more because I just went out and bought this little guy just to try it, and then obviously with the show, so I figured why not smoke this guy.
Yeah.
And I agree, like it's super rich, and it like we've been talking about the whole time. It doesn't go over the top on anything, but it's
Hmm.
got everything right at that like top end of almost going over the top.
So there's no question this La Debauche cognac barrel is like hands down the pair of the night. But I'm gonna kind of work my way back because we got a few minutes here before we wrap it up. And I want to see if now that I've kind of gone away from that funky old Bruin, whether I can get some more characteristics out of this oatmeal stout.
All right, and while you're doing that, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on my pairings.
Roger that.
So now that we've sort of rediscovered for both of us that transition right at kind of the midpoint of the cigar,
Mm-hmm.
where it goes from medium and everything in balance to kind of just like bubbling over the top almost. Uh, I'm going to say the best pairing for the first half was the Innis and Gunn. The best pairing for the second half is the Imperial Biscotti break.
Wow.
So if you can get your hands on both of those and a Lennox, you're in for a pretty good pairing trio.
I mean, Tripp, it's almost like you can't just smoke an inch of a cigar to get the full character of what that cigar is. You know what I'm saying?
One might say.
One might say. I think our audience knows where I'm going with that. So going back to the evil twin brewing no hero oatmeal stout, again, it's not an oatmeal stout. I'll call it an oatmeal porter because the flavor profile on it is just too thin to pair with the cigar. And I think the flavor profile of this cigar is really running the beer over, which is really unfortunate. I'm going to hit up the Old Bruin now and make some faces because it is just so vastly different from the profile of these two beers.
It's just got some funk.
Yeah, I mean, like even on the nose, it just super reminds me of lambic because I get that caramelized brown sugar, which I
Yeah.
really associate with alambic.
Hmm.
And then just like the very first thing you get is just that huge acidic mouthfeel, which I really like out of alambic. But in terms of cigar pairing, I don't know. I'm not sold.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's funky.
lambics generally aren't great with cigars.
No, they're not.
Uh, and I could see a lambic-ish brown ale not being great with cigars.
Now that being said, if you want to pick up a short Lennox and try it out, I think it's kind of an interesting and fun pairing experience. I mean, you kind of do get that, that quality of a lambic without getting the overly fruity quality. It's not too sour, so it's not like a true sour, and it's not like a sour or a cider where you get a lot of overpowering fruity characteristics. They're all really nicely balanced. But in terms of pairing with a cigar, I don't know. It's a funky experiment, that's for sure.
Yeah. And that reminded me when you said the petite. I did find out this is a 5x40, which is kind of a weird
Oh,
size.
that is a weird size.
It's like the length of a Corona, but the ring gauge of a petite Corona.
It's almost like a short, large Lancero. I mean, that's
a
weird.
half Lancero Gorda, a half Husky Lancero.
It's a Husky Lancero. It's a short Husky Lancero. You call it the you know what you call it, like the fat boy Lancero.
The fat Lancero.
The fat Lancero. Yeah, it's funky.
Yeah, it's just a weird size, but I think it works really well.
It's a weird size. So, wrapping up here, I'm going to throw you into the bus a little bit. Do we have a cigar chat guest booked for tomorrow night? Not that I'd be able to attend because I'm going to be getting on a plane to Havana. But
we do not have one tomorrow night. I got an email while we were talking that we may have one for next week. So you have to wait to find out who that is.
All right. Well, we'll certainly let our guests, our audience know, both on cigarfederation.com and Facebook. I apologize. I've got some lambic gases going on here, so I'm trying not to be rude and belch in our audience's ears. So we'll definitely post that on cigarfederation.com. We'll post that on facebook.com a couple days in advance of the event just so people know who our special guest is. And, if you are a guest out there and want to join Cigar Chat and put up with Logan's antics for 58 minutes, we certainly welcome you to. Who can they contact, Tripp?
They can contact me. Actually, I don't have an email address at cigarfederation.com, and I don't want to give out my regular email address.
How about
so I'm going to say they
email
can
me?
Contact you.
So surgeon@cigarfederation.com. Hit me up. Send me an email. We'd love to have you on Cigar Chat. We've got a few months before the IPCPR here, so we'd like to talk about the new hotness. Maybe see if we can extract some secret squirrel stuff out of you before the IPCPR, get you in trouble with your marketing team. Hit me up, surgeon@cigarfederation.com. And I want to say thanks to all our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners out there. I know we've had a bit of a gap between our last sharing our pairings and this one, but we really do value you guys, and we know you're out there keeping us safe wherever you are stationed in the world. Probably getting a little hot wherever you're stationed in the world, especially if you're out in the sandbox. But hope you're staying safe, and hope you have a fantastic weekend. As we always say in sharing our pairings, we want you to drink better, but drink less. We're back, and we're gonna do an After Dark segment. I'm not gonna cuss a lot because I feel strangely weird with this being on Facebook. That I need to be a little bit more responsible. A little bit more debonair.
I say fuck that.
Fuck that.
Fuck that. I mean, if you're watching it on Facebook, it shows up. It doesn't have sound. You got to click on it to get sound anyway. You know what you're getting into.
You know what you get into.
Yeah, this is a good cigar, man. I think I forgot how good this was.
I'm glad I have a bunch left. I can't remember if I think I did a video review, which I still have yet to post. But it's really good, man. It's balanced. It's nuanced. It is in the limited, because it is part of the Flor Dominicana limited edition range. But what I like about it is that when they come out with a limited edition range, it's good. Like it's you're not going to be let down. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to drop that $10.50, $11.50, whatever it costs, and feel like you got ripped off. I mean, even the presentation on the box is really cool. It came in like that cool round box. It was
such a cool box.
Yeah, it's a cool box. I mean, a lot of people, maybe don't notice that on a limited edition cigar, but it's a cost. And, we found out some of the costs of boxes when we were down in Nicaragua.
Oh, man. Some of them are so expensive. It's crazy. And I know that, that's just for a regular box.
Yeah.
Like, for one that's got, fancy molding at the top or printing on the inside and stuff like that. I mean, I can see some manufacturers paying as much as $25 a box, which is nuts.
That's crazy. It's cray.
Cray.
So I'm gonna rant a little bit.
Oh, I know what you're gonna rant about.
Yeah, you do.
Go ahead, sister.
I'm going. So for all of you out there who are not CRA members, go to CRA, become a member today, because what I'm about to talk about is the kind of bullshit that's going to be coming your way in not too long. And what's that bullshit I'm talking about? Well, I'll tell you what, that bullshit is tobacco taxes. And normally in Canada, where we really get boned is at the provincial level. So to give you a sense of it, it's a two-tier tax system. We have a federal excise tax and import tax, and then we have a provincial tax. And the provincial tax is really the lion's share of where we pay the taxes on tobacco products. Unfortunately, our federal government has decided to come up with a new budget, which I wasn't really too worried about until I got an alert email in my inbox before the show, which is why I was a little heated up at the beginning. Our federal government, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that cigars in Canada do not cost enough already. So they've decided to increase our excise tax. They've increased it, I think I have to look at the numbers, but it's gone from 67% excise to 84% excise. And what happens at the provincial level is our provincial multiplier is a multiplier. So it's not, it goes from 67 to 84 and you get an increase of just, 17%. We get 17%, and then the provincial multiplier is 1.3 on top of that. So that extra 7% now becomes 21 extra percent of tobacco tax at the provincial level, which is bullshit. So
it's crazy. It's insane.
It's crazy. It's so complex. It's so convoluted. It's so ridiculous that I've got a spreadsheet on my computer with the various levels of calculation, so I can just plug the numbers in and find out what that true boning is going to be at the end of the night. And I think what it's going to end up being is that on most boxes, it's going to be about a 10 to 12% increase in cost.
Oh.
10 to 12%. So, and that's
because
on top.
What did they raise the percentage by?
So the federal excise was 67%, and it's now 84%.
Oh God, it's crazy.
It's crazy. So this couldn't come at a better time, and I say that facetiously, because I'm about to go to Havana. And one of the fun parts about going to Havana is that you go down to Havana, you find some additional limitadas, some custom rolls, maybe you're over your allotment, no big deal. You come by, you come back, you do your good duty as a good Canadian taxpayer, you pay your taxes. That's really given me some pause to think about, do I really want to go over my allotment when I come back? Because I don't know what that calculation is going to be, because I don't know what the true result is yet. And I don't know how hard that's going to really screw me over when I come back. So now we've got, 7-8 guys going down to Havana to buy cigars, and we might actually reduce the amount of cigars we buy. And, obviously I'm in the industry, and I'm looking forward to see how much is that really going to impact our cigar sales at the stores. How much is that going to impact the amount of money that people are going to be able to spend in our stores? It's a bad move. It's a bad move, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, it's just sad that, obviously there's a gap in understanding, which is, of course, the same thing that's causing this whole FDA thing, is because when people think of cigars, they don't think of the hobby that goes along with cigars. They don't think of, the pairing, the trips to Nicaragua, stuff like that. When's the last time somebody went for like a 4-day stay so that they could see where they make Marlboro cigarettes?
Yeah.
I
would say never.
The culture is completely different, and the purpose of the product is completely different. And that's where things get confusing for people who don't know about cigars, because there's just a lack of education. And I don't know of a good way to get that education out there. The best way that I've seen is, I can't remember their names right now, the guys who are making the hand-rolled documentary. They're making a movie that's a documentary about premium cigars and just kind of from start to finish what, why people care about cigars and why there's an entire industry around it. And nobody, not a single person in that industry is there because there is any kind of addiction.
No.
Or anything like that. It's all the consumers are there because they're passionate about it at some level.
Exactly. Other than Logan, when's the last time you got on a plane flight and you were 2 hours into a plane flight and you were like, oh man, I really need a cigar, man. I'm dying in the plane. I'm not going to make it. Never.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I do like when I was sitting in an airport for several hours this weekend. I did think, man, I could really use a cigar, but it's not because I feel like my body needs a cigar or anything. A cigar is just a way to relax my mind. I
Hmm.
mean, it just makes me a little bit less stressed out. Um, which there's of course no chemical in cigars that makes you less stressed out. There's a little nicotine, which will make you more
Little,
stressed out.
little vitamin N, man. So I am, of course, leaving on a jet plane in about just over 26 hours
Oh man.
to Havana. Yeah, it's weird. I don't normally fly out late at night. It's kind of a weird flight the way it works, but it's the only way I could kind of make the flights work. So unfortunately, it's I haven't done an overnight flight in a really long time. I can honestly say I'm really not looking forward to it because it's going to be a very long day.
Yeah.
Basically, leaving at 12:30 a.m. and I think I hit the ground in Havana at like 11 in the morning
That's
when
always
it's all said and
rough
done. Yeah.
because you don't really like, normally you're traveling during the day and you're passing out on planes, and then by the time you get there, you're kind of ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
And you just tough it out for a couple hours and then you're done. But when you go through that same experience, but you arrive in the morning, it's like now you have to stay up all day, or you're going to ruin your sleep schedule for the whole trip.
And the thing about Havana is that they're really, excuse me, woo, there really are no early nights in Havana
Of
at
course.
all. So, I get there probably, if I'm lucky, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, if
Oh
I'm
man.
lucky. And then, have some Cuban coffee when I'm there. But we're pretty much going to be immediately going out, doing some cigar shopping, hit up Hotel Nacional and have some mojitos, have some more Cuban coffees. And I mean, if I get to bed before 1 in the morning that night, I'd be shocked.
Man, I need to go to Cuba
It's pretty good. It's a good time.
now that I'm allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
I got to make a trip down there one of these days.
Just get your tourist visa. Start applying now.
Oh, is that a thing? See, I
Yeah.
didn't even know. I would have gotten there in, I don't know, whenever I decided to go. I would have gotten there and they would have been like, no, you can't come in. You don't have a tourist visa.
Yeah, I think you either need to. There's two ways you can go. There's a website, the state website, federal website you can go to apply for your tourist visa.
Okay.
But there's like 14 different or 13 different exemption reasons for it, and experiencing tobacco culture would certainly be one of those reasons. And beyond that, from that point on, you're good. You just for you, easy flight to Havana because it's not very far. Land, go through the customs stuff, and you're good to go. And
Yeah.
it's a different world. It's a very different, very interesting experience.
I mean, just out of curiosity, I was looking at I think yesterday, I was just looking at flights to Havana, and they're about, uh, I don't know, 30% cheaper than a flight to Nicaragua
Mm,
with considerably less layovers. It's one layover in LAX, then a direct
yeah,
flight from there. Sounds easy.
yeah. For Canadians, because Nicaragua is quite a ways away, and because there's not a ton of Canadian tourism to Nicaragua versus Havana, like to give you a sense of it, I think last year almost 2 million Canadians visited Nicaragua for vacation out of a country of 33 million.
Wow.
And yeah,
You mean Havana
so
or
in
Nicaragua?
in Cuba,
Okay, you said Nicaragua, and I was very confused.
yeah. I might have had a beer or two. So our flights to Cuba, like I was trying to explain this to somebody else. Like if I want to go down to Cuba and I just want to go to a resort, I think on average I could probably spend $350 or $400 for a week,
Wow.
all inclusive in
Oh my
Cuba.
God, that's amazing. For
Right?
me, a flight alone is going to be about $500 round
Right.
trip. That's like you're talking like for me Vegas money. I mean,
It's
if I
Vegas.
want to fly to
Yeah.
Vegas, I can go to Vegas and have dinner for less, and then fly home for less than it cost me to fly to Nicaragua.
Yes. Yeah. It's full on Vegas money, but all inclusive for the week. So a lot of people talk about Mexico, and it's like, well, the thing about Cuba is extremely safe for a tourist
Yeah.
for tourism. It's extremely safe. In fact, I'd put it right up there with Nicaragua, maybe even a little bit safer than Nicaragua. And Nicaragua to me is 100% safe. But But the downside is that while there's some really great Cuban restaurants, overall, I'm kind of partial to Nicaraguan food over Cuban food, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Nicaragua is a huge beef producer. They've got a lot more spices and ingredients that are available to them to create wonderful meals.
Yeah.
Where in Cuba, they kind of have to just go with what they've got.
Sure.
So yeah, it's it's a good experience, and for the money, it's inexpensive. Like I can basically for my flight cost to Nicaragua, I can stay 7 days in Havana, including hotel.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's actually less than that.
I really got to go to Nicaragua now.
Cuba.
Or Cuba, yes. Sorry, I keep getting backwards now.
Beers.
Yeah.
So we'll have to figure out what we're doing for our pairing show next week. It'll be a bit of a short week for me because I'm flying back on Tuesday, so I'll basically have half a day to prepare. But I'm game, and our weather here is going to be in the low to mid 60s. So low to mid 60s. I mean, you can see I'm not wearing a jacket. I'm not wearing a long sleeve shirt. I just got my fancy hoodie on and a toque. Really, the toque is just because I wanted to show it off, not because I'm cold. So I'm ready to rock. This feels like summer vacation for me compared to the winter weather we just got through. So I'm totally down.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll come up with some ideas for next week.
Roger that. All right, so thanks to all our audience who tune in live on Facebook, cigarfederation.com, and YouTube. Thanks to all of our podcast listeners out there, wherever you are in the world. I know you guys are like in 30, 40 countries out there listening to our show. We really appreciate that. And like we said, sorry it's been 4 weeks since we had our last show, but we want you to tune in next week. We're going to have another pairing show. So as we say on Sharing Our Pairings, drink better, but drink less.